which publish charts on paper and, more recently, in electronic format. They also license commercial organisations to publish derivatives of their charts. For example, United Kingdom Hydrographic Office, usually known as the UKHO, license IMRAE, Jeppesen, Navionics and Garmin, amongst many others, to use UKHO cartography in their proprietary products. Each licensee uses its own colour palette and symbology, and standardisation, especially amongst publishers of leisure electronic charts. The UKHO itself and IMRAE are the two major publishers of paper charts for the British Isles. IMRAE paper charts are popular with navigators of small craft because they are printed on waterproof paper. Your RYA charts 3 and 4 are representative of UKHO charts, which are known as Admiralty charts. Both UKHO and IMRAE publish small craft portfolios of A2 size charts ideally suited for use on a yacht's chart table. Each portfolio comprises around 20 charts at varying scales. Of course, publishers provide catalogues of their charts. UKHO, for example, provide their catalogue on paper, online, and as a downloadable application. Charts are referenced by catalogue number, which is found at the corners of the chart. Look at your RYA chart 3. You'll find its catalogue number in the top left and bottom right-hand corners. They also show an edition number and date in the bottom left-hand corner. If you're buying paper charts, check the relevant catalogue to discover the latest edition number and date to ensure the dusty old chart you found in the chandler's is the latest edition. Of course, paper charts start to go out of date the moment they're published. Natural features such as coastlines and rocks do not change, although sandbars might. However, man-made features, for example lights, offshore structures, rules and regulations change continually. So paper charts should be regularly updated by hand, and a part of the service provided by good chart agents is to continually update their stock of paper charts so that when you buy one, it's up to date. However, don't expect your local chandler to do the same. Notice alongside the edition number and date the words Notices to Mariners 2002 8195 8812. This means that the chart has already been corrected up to Notices to Mariners from 2002, reference number 8195 and 8812. In the UK, chart corrections are distributed via Admiralty Notices to Mariners, published by UKHO. You can subscribe to them in paper form, however they are available free online. See the link on the Resources tab. Another convenient means for yachtsmen to obtain chart corrections is to subscribe to Practical Boat Owner, which publishes a list every month. Electronic charts might be supplied on cartridges, disk, or via download from the Internet. Each publisher has its own way of distributing corrections, normally via subscription service, and possibly requiring special hardware to update the chart cartridge via a personal computer. Beware! Corrections to electronic charts aimed at the leisure marine market are not published as regularly as Notices to Mariners, and it can be very difficult, or impossible, to discover exactly how up-to-date an electronic chart is. So, unless you know for certain that your chart is bang up-to-date, don't be surprised if reality diverges from what you expect from inspecting your paper chart or chart plotter. Charts might be relatively small scale, like this one, which you could use for planning a passage along the central south coast of England. Note the scale is 1 in 50,000. Whereas this one is drawn to a much larger scale of 1 in 5,000 and might be employed to create a pilotage plan for navigating Lymington River. Scale is therefore relative, not absolute. 1 in 5,000 is a larger scale than 1 in 50,000. Just remember that large-scale charts make things look large, small-scale charts make things look small. Charts are based on large-scale surveys undertaken by skilled hydrographers. These might be national agencies, like the Specialist Hydrographic Branch of the Royal Navy, or private companies contracted by national agencies. Charts sometimes show a source data diagram, informing the user when different parts of a charted area were last surveyed. If you carefully study the source diagram in the top right-hand corner of your RYA Chart 3, you'll discover that some areas have not been surveyed for decades, and in one case, Area G, not for 100 years. You might think that basing a 21st century chart on a survey over a century old is unusual, but that's far from the case. 19th and 20th century hydrographers were remarkably skilled, and, within the context of their chart, established the position of geographic features with remarkable accuracy via triangulation. The qualification is, however, within the words "within the context of their chart." For example, they could chart the position of a dangerous rock relative to other geographic features to within a few feet either way. However, while everything was pretty much perfectly charted relative to everything else, there had to be some starting point, which is known as a datum point, or datum, and its position could only be determined by reference to other datums, and they, in turn, to other datums, and so on, thereby introducing a significant degree of error. The datum for a charted island could only be fixed by astronomical observation using a sextant and a chronometer. Even a skilled navigator taking multiple sites could well be half a mile out. The result is that many places simply are not where they say they are on the chart. This never mattered before the days of GPS because navigators either established position relative to geographic features on the chart or navigated with extreme caution, avoiding dangers by a large safety margin. Many charts carry warnings to this effect. Navigators ignore them at their peril. You also need to consider that until the early 1990s, all bottom surveys were conducted with either, and originally, a lead line, or, from about 1940, using a straightforward depth sounder. This means that surveys conducted before 1990 might have missed significant underwater obstructions, such as rocks, in between sweeps. Suppliers of electronic charts sidestep the issue by displaying a catch-all disclaimer that you must accept before viewing their charts. Imagine that you are navigating shore around the infamous Cascades, perhaps into the charted anchorage to the south, or to cheat a foul tide. You might be tempted to trust your chart plotter to keep you clear of the rock, but if you did, you'd be relying on surveys conducted in the mid-19th century. A related issue is choice of horizontal, or map, datum. Imagine that you were Captain Blackbeard, and you needed to bury some treasure on a desert island, making it simple for someone with the correct instructions to retrieve it at a future date. One way would be to specify the treasure's position relative to some distinctive feature. In this example, Skull Rock. Blackbeard's treasure is buried 100 paces north and 30 paces west of Skull Rock. Skull Rock is our horizontal, or map, datum. However, the choice of datum is entirely arbitrary. Blackbeard could have chosen something else as his datum, perhaps a distinctive tree, in which case the measurements relative to the alternative datum would be completely different. But, just like Blackbeard's island, the Earth is not a perfectly regular shape. It's slightly squashed, top and bottom, into what's known as an oblate spheroid. It also has surface irregularities. So there's no geometrically precise centre of the Earth for cartographers to use as a common datum, and over time, national and international bodies have chosen many different points as their datum. WGS, World Geodetic System 84, is the latest international standard, and gradually all charts are being redrawn to it. However, there are still many charts that are not. GPS intended for serious navigation, like this Garmin GPS 128, will allow you to select from a wide range of datum. Mobile phones do not. And if you're navigating using a GPS in conjunction with paper charts, you should always check to ensure that your GPS is configured to give positions relative to the same datum as the chart. In this case, it would be WGS 84. However, this chart is drawn relative to Ordnance Survey of Ireland datum, and most GPSs won't offer this as an option. So you'd have to make manual corrections to positions given on your GPS by latitude and longitude before you could plot them accurately on the chart. Imagine, for example, you are approaching Dungarvan from the southeast in thick fog, and you had carefully positioned a waypoint to keep you clear to the northeast of Carrick-a-Payne. If you used your GPS, programmed to plot positions relative to WGS 84, to navigate to the waypoint, you would pass much closer to Carrick-a-Payne than you intended. Obviously, this could be extremely dangerous. Of course, none of the foregoing mattered in the slightest before the advent of GPS, because navigators fixed their position relative to charted features, so it didn't matter what datum the chart was drawn to. If they couldn't plot a visual fix, they assumed that their position was inaccurate and navigated with extreme caution. The other dimension is, of course, the vertical dimension. From 1800 to 1968, UK Admiralty charts were published with depths and heights in fathoms and feet, where a fathom equals 6 feet. However, since 1968, they have gradually been converted to meters, but even today there are still some in fathoms and feet, whereas US charts are in feet. Take a look at this large-scale chart. The black figures written all over it are charted depths, for example 12 or 1.5 meters. These should be the least depth ever experienced at these points. Notice how 1.5 meters is written on the chart. The decimal point is omitted and the 5 is subscripted. Areas coloured green on the chart are sometimes covered and sometimes uncovered by the surface of the sea. Look at the figure written here. Notice that the 4 is underlined. This is a drying height, and on an exceptionally low tide, this point might be as much as 4.3 meters above the surface of the sea. On Admiralty charts, land is coloured yellow. Areas that might sometimes be covered and sometimes uncovered by the sea, beaches, rocks, mudflats, etc., are green. The shallowest water is dark blue, then light blue, then white. On this chart, the transition from dark blue to light blue is on the 10-meter line, and from light blue to white is on the 20-meter line. Notice here, and here, that the 20 and 30-meter contours are marked with their depth in meters written in line with the contour. Whereas on this much larger scale chart, the transition from dark blue to light blue is on the 2-meter line, and from light blue to white is on the 5-meter line. So you need to examine your charts carefully to determine the relevance of their color coding. Charts incorporate a very large set of symbols and abbreviations. Some are given on pages 6 to 7 and page 9 of your RYA Training Almanac, but for a full set you need either an Admiralty UKHO chart 5011, which is available from Chandler's, Chart Agents and Amazon, or a copy of US chart number 1, which is free and is available to view and print from the Resources tab. Nobody could be expected to memorize all the thousands of symbols and abbreviations. If you see a symbol on a chart that you don't recognize, try to find something that looks similar inside the back cover of the 5011 or US chart number 1, then search for it in the relevant section. Apart from an appropriate selection of small and large-scale charts, an up-to-date Nautical Almanac is essential. They are published annually, and there are many different publishers and formats. Some are starting to be released in digital format. Reed's Nautical Almanac is pretty much the standard for British leisure mariners navigating in Western Europe. This version costs around £35 and includes 700 chartlets, details of harbour facilities, tide tables and streams, 7,500 waypoints, international code and flags, weather, distance tables, passage advice, area planning charts, rules of the road, radio information, communications, safety, first aid, documentation and customs, as well as a free Reed's Marina Guide. Your RYA Training Almanac pretty much mimics a Reed's Almanac. Take time to go through it to get an idea of what's included. Pilot books are a very valuable addition to the Navigator's Reference Library. Again, there are many different publishers. Tom Cunliffe's excellent Shell Channel Pilot is pretty much universally adopted as the standard for the English Channel. The Royal Cruising Club Pilotage Foundation does an excellent job commissioning and publishing pilot books, especially intended for yachtsmen and covering some of the remotest parts of the world. A good pilot book will provide you with seasonal weather statistics, sailing directions to the area, large-scale charts, recommended tracks and visual references with pictures, local rules and regulations. It will also tell you where you can buy fuel, gas and water up. Some even make restaurant recommendations. Most almanacs provide very similar information, but usually at a lower level of detail. And, in some parts of the world, pilot books are available but almanacs are not. Very much related to charts is the need to measure distance and plot position. We'll look at plotting position first, and here's where we introduce the concept of latitude and longitude. Latitude is an angular distance measured north or south of the equator, where the equator is at 0 degrees, the North Pole is at 90 degrees north, and the South Pole is at 90 degrees south. Longitude is an angular distance measured east or west of the prime meridian, which used to be known as the Greenwich Meridian, running north-south through Greenwich and crossing the equator at right angles. For example, a position might therefore be defined as 50 degrees north, 030 degrees west. New York is at approximately 40 degrees north, 074 degrees west. Sydney is at approximately 34 degrees south, 151 degrees east. Obviously, we need to be able to define our position by latitude and longitude to a higher level of precision than a degree. So we use degrees, minutes, where there are 60 minutes in a degree, and decimal parts of a minute. If we have to pass a position by latitude and longitude, there is a correct form. For example, 46 degrees, 17 decimal 45 minutes north, 005 degrees, 41 decimal 23 minutes west. Note that latitude is always given first. The level of precision depends upon the circumstances. 1 minute of latitude is effectively 1 nautical mile, so you only need to give minutes to one decimal place to define your position to within 1/10 of a mile. Our imaginary RYA training world is north of the equator and west of the meridian. So, on your RYA charts 3 and 4, latitude increases as you move north up the chart, and longitude increases as you move to your left from east to west. Take a close look at your RYA chart 3. Running horizontally across the chart, just passing through the northern extremity of the southern peninsula, you'll find a line marking 4-6 degrees north. And running vertically up and down the chart, approximately in the middle, a line marking 0-0-6 degrees west. Lines representing latitude are properly known as parallels of latitude, as in the 46th parallel. Lines representing longitude are properly known as meridians of longitude, as in the Greenwich Meridian. Notice that on this type of chart they intersect at right angles. The rectangles made up of parallels of latitude and meridians of longitude are called graticules. Depending on the scale of your chart, individual minutes might be divided into a number of decimal parts. On RYA chart 3 it's 5, so each minor increment on the latitude scale represents 0.2 minutes. Whereas on chart 4B, each minor increment is 0.1 of a minute. So, let's plot a position in the top right-hand corner of RYA chart 3. Follow along with me. The given position is 4-6 degrees 2.1 minutes north, 0.05 degrees 4.5 minutes west. Find the parallel of latitude 4-6 degrees 10 minutes north. Work up from here first to 4-6 degrees and 15 minutes north, and then to 4-6 degrees and 20 minutes north, and to 21 minutes north, and finally to the latitude of our position, 4-6 degrees 21.4 minutes north. Notice that because the minor increments within a minute are each 0.2 of a minute, we need to measure up 2 units to get to 0.4 of a minute. Mark this point on the side of your chart. Do pretty much the same on the longitude scale running across the top of the chart, starting at 0.05 degrees 40 minutes west, then 4.5 minutes west, and finally to 0.05 degrees 4.5 minutes west. Mark this point on the top of your chart. Now use your protractor to draw 2 lines, the first running horizontally across the chart from your first mark, and the second running vertically down from your second mark so that they intersect at your position. Mark the position as a fix, like this. Obviously, we could reverse the procedure to determine the position of any charted feature by latitude and longitude. Distance is measured in nautical miles, where 1 nautical mile is approximately 1 minute of arc measured along any meridian, and at the first International Extraordinary Hydrographic Conference, Monaco, in 1929, it was set at 1,852 meters. The nautical mile remains in use by sea and air navigators worldwide, as opposed to, for example, kilometers, because 1 nautical mile is equal to a minute of latitude on a chart, so a distance measured with chart dividers can be roughly converted to nautical miles using the chart's latitude scale. Nautical miles might be divided into decimal parts, for example 3.1 miles, or if the distance is less than 1 mile, the term cable is often used. 1 cable is 1/10 of a nautical mile. Take out your RYA Chart 3, look in the top right-hand corner and measure the distance between the Foxtrot Charlie 3 and Foxtrot Charlie 5 buoys. You should get approximately 3.1 nautical miles. Speed is measured in knots, where 1 knot is 1 nautical mile per hour. You need to be comfortable with time, speed and distance calculations. Perhaps you remember the distance-speed-time triangle from your school days. Distance in nautical miles equals speed in knots multiplied by time in hours. Speed in knots equals distance in nautical miles divided by time in hours. Time in hours equals distance in nautical miles divided by speed in knots. For example, if we are making 5.3 knots, it will take us 1.43 hours to sail 7.6 miles. To convert decimal hours to hours and minutes, subtract the whole number of hours, 1 in this case, and multiply the decimal part by 60. How long in hours and minutes will it take you to sail 37 miles at an average speed of 6 knots? The answer is 6 hours and 10 minutes. We can use distance and direction to define position. For example, we are 2 miles southwest of the Needles. This is called a fix, and the correct symbol is a circle, usually these days with a cross in it. Another way of saying this would be 2 miles 225 degrees from the Needles. On a compass, we measure degrees clockwise round from north. So, for example, east is 090 degrees. South is 180 degrees. West is 270 degrees, etc. We use 3 digits to avoid miscommunication. Otherwise, 90 might sound like 19, and so on. North might be spoken as 000 degrees, but it is more usually said as 360 degrees. Imagine that we wish to plot a position given as 1.5 miles 050 degrees from Mutton East Cardinal Buoy. Follow along with me on your Chart 4, Plan F. Take your plotter and adjust the protractor in the middle so as 050 degrees is aligned against the line in the middle, adjacent to the big arrow on the end. Now, rotate the whole plotter until the little arrow on the protractor points north and slide it across the chart until an edge is on the bottom of Mutton East Cardinal Buoy. Notice that the grid in the protractor is aligned with the grid on the chart. Now, draw a line from the buoy in the direction of the big arrow and mark its outer end with an arrow head. This is what's known as a position line. Using the latitude scale running vertically up and down the side of the chart, open your chart dividers up to a distance of 1.5 miles and measure this distance along the line you've just drawn to find the position. You mark with the symbol for a fix. Note that the precise location of the buoy is given by the little circle drawn at its base. Distance is always measured using the latitude scale, never the longitude scale, and it's good practice to use the scale at approximately the same latitude as the distance you're measuring. There are technical reasons for this, to do with the way charts project the spherical surface of the Earth onto sheets of paper.
Well done. You've completed the lesson. Now go on to complete exercise 1.